Hey everyone, I'm here looking for advice on a situation that has left me reeling. While I feel like I already know the angle most people will suggest, given how similar stories have played out here before, I'm really hoping for insight that can help me navigate this. I'm a 39-year-old male, married to my 37-year-old wife for 11 years. Like many couples, we've faced some rough patches. Ours were more concentrated in the middle of our marriage. However, I genuinely believed we had worked through those challenges and grown stronger as a couple. Apparently, I was very, very wrong. Before diving into the current chaos, let me give you some context about us and our relationship. I'm an academic working at a university, which has always been my dream. I've been fortunate enough to achieve many career milestones, including working with a Nobel laureate, though I've also built a significant reputation in my own right. My wife, on the other hand, runs a beauty salon, an endeavor she didn't initially set out to pursue but has excelled in over time. She's even planning an expansion into cosmetic services, though her credit isn't strong enough to secure a loan independently, so the plan is for me to co-sign. Financially, we're in a good place, which I found reassuring given how often money is cited as the root cause of divorces. However, as I recently discovered, money isn't the only thing that can unravel a marriage. The bombshell. One day, my wife approached me with an uncomfortable conversation about our intimate life. She claimed there wasn't anything wrong with it, something I fully expected because I go out of my way to fulfill her needs and even proactively learn how to improve in that area. But then she hit me with an analogy that made me question reality. She compared our sex life to having the best burger every day. Amazing, but sometimes, she said, you just want a hot dog. I was dumbfounded. At first, I thought she might be joking, but her seriousness quickly became apparent. I asked repeatedly if she was being truthful, and every time, she insisted she was. She said she wanted to explore the idea of opening our marriage, emphasizing it wouldn't be one-sided. It's not just for me, she said. Things will be open for you too. That didn't make me feel better. I was deeply disturbed by the notion of non-exclusivity. To me, it undermines the very foundation of a romantic partnership. I asked if this was some kind of ultimatum, but she framed it as a heartfelt request, saying it would make her genuinely unhappy if I didn't at least consider it. A crossroads. For now, I haven't given her an answer. I'm trying to weigh my options, but the whole situation has thrown me off balance. I never saw this coming, and I feel like I'm being asked to sacrifice a core value for the sake of my marriage. While some might think this is a trivial issue to end a marriage over, for me, it feels like the heart of what makes our relationship meaningful is being questioned. She insists that I would have the same freedom in this arrangement, which some might consider fair. And I'll admit, in my college days, I had my share of wild experiences. It's not like I lack the skills to navigate such a setup, but now, I'm older and my values have shifted. Seeking advice. I know many will say I should stand firm, say no, or even leave her for suggesting this. Believe me, I've thought about that, but after 11 years together, it's not so easy to walk away. Some people have suggested I could agree to try it with clear boundaries, keeping an open mind but being prepared to walk away if she can't stick to her terms. Is that wise? Am I making a huge mistake by even entertaining this idea? Could an open marriage somehow work? Or will it ultimately destroy the foundation of trust and respect we've built? Final thoughts. For those who've been through something similar or have insight into navigating such a situation, I'm all ears. I'm not naive. I know this is a precarious road. But I also don't want to end a marriage over what could be a misguided idea on her part. If you've made it this far, thanks for reading. Any guidance you can offer would mean the world to me. It's been a while since my last post, and let's just say life has taken an interesting turn. My wife's proposal for an open marriage wasn't something I wanted, but since I was essentially pushed into it, I decided I might as well make the most of it. At first, I voiced my objections, telling her I wasn't enthusiastic about the idea and that I was only agreeing to make her happy. She didn't seem to care much, though. She took my reluctant yes and ran with it. Well, if she thought I'd sit back idly while she explored this newfound freedom, she underestimated me. Instead of sulking, I decided to embrace the situation, and, to my surprise, it turned out better than I could have imagined. I avoided dating apps. They seemed impersonal and unappealing, and instead became a little more sociable within my university network. It didn't take much effort to spark some chemistry, especially with people outside my department. Shockingly, it was all incredibly straightforward, with everyone clear on keeping things casual and unattached. I was pleasantly surprised at how mature and uncomplicated the whole thing was. Finding opportunity in chaos. About 2 months into this arrangement, I found myself entangled with 3 women, one of whom invited me to a symposium where she was speaking. It wasn't a date. It was purely casual. I accepted, and the experience turned out to be more rewarding than I'd anticipated. Not only was I able to enjoy stimulating conversations in a field entirely different from my own, but I also networked with several influential individuals and collected a handful of business cards. Ironically, the open marriage didn't just spice up my romantic life. It supercharged my social and professional circles. Suddenly, I was interacting with fascinating, accomplished people I wouldn't have met otherwise. My social life had taken a sophisticated turn, far removed from nightclubs or parties, and I was thriving, a bitter pill to swallow. My wife, on the other hand, wasn't quite as enthusiastic about how things were unfolding. She was visibly irritated when I shared photos from the symposium, especially when she noticed how attractive the speaker who'd invited me was. Her jealousy became even more apparent when she saw how easily I was mingling with high-profile individuals. It seemed like she'd imagined this open marriage benefiting her more than me, watching me build an enviable social circle and enjoying life in a way she couldn't was clearly not what she'd expected. By this point, I was so detached from her feelings that I didn't feel even a twinge of guilt about her discomfort. The plot thickens. Roughly 4 months into the arrangement, she came to me asking to talk about our situation. I couldn't help but find it amusing. Was she going to set new rules to protect her feelings, or was she about to call the whole thing off? As it turned out, it was the latter. She admitted the open marriage wasn't what she thought it would be and wanted to return to exclusivity. Her reasoning? She didn't like how I was acting like you're more important than you are, making fancy friends here and there. It was painfully obvious her jealousy wasn't just about my romantic exploits, but also about the new social and professional connections I was making. By this point, I had no interest in placating her. I initially refused her request to close the marriage, which infuriated her, but seeing her so upset only solidified my decision to pull away emotionally. Eventually, I agreed to close the marriage, but only in name. In my mind, the damage had already been done. Update 2. A new chapter. To everyone who said her request for an open marriage was a flashing red flag signaling the end of our relationship, you were absolutely right. Back then, I was too in love, or perhaps too naive, to walk away immediately. But ironically, opening the marriage gave me the clarity I needed to move on. Once she asked to close the marriage, I knew there was no salvaging our connection. An open arrangement, once started, either becomes a new normal or leaves an indelible scar. For me, the latter was true. I couldn't unsee how casually she'd gambled with the sanctity of our relationship, and her attempt to reverse the damage felt desperate and hollow. The very next day, I began researching divorce lawyers. It wasn't a decision I made lightly, but it was the right one. I realized the person I married no longer existed, or perhaps I'd never really known her at all. Lessons learned. Opening the marriage, despite its challenges, turned out to be an unlikely blessing. It helped me build a richer, more fulfilling life, one that I doubt I would have pursued otherwise. I made meaningful professional connections, revitalized my social life, and regained a sense of independence I didn't realize I'd lost. For those reading this, my advice is simple. If your partner suggests opening your marriage, take it as a warning. It often means they're already eyeing someone else or dissatisfied in ways they haven't expressed. While it might seem like a chance to salvage the relationship, it's more likely to be the beginning of the end. In my case, I'm grateful for the clarity it brought. My only regret? That it took me this long to see things for what they were. After navigating the chaos of an open marriage and coming to terms with its irreparable damage, I decided it was time to take control of my life. It wasn't an easy journey, but one thing became clear. When someone forces your hand, sometimes the best move is to play it to your advantage. When I decided to pursue divorce, I realized I needed a skilled lawyer to ensure I came out on top. To my surprise, some of the connections I had made during the open marriage proved invaluable. One of my new friends recommended the attorney he had used, claiming the man was a miracle worker. Without wasting time, I reached out and hired him, paying the retainer within a week. By the following week, my wife was served at her workplace, no less. Unsurprisingly, it didn't go down well. She called me incessantly, her frantic attempts to reach me totaling over 15 calls in a single day. I didn't answer even once. When I finally got home, she was already there fuming. The confrontation. The moment I stepped out of my car, it was a shouting match, or at least her shouting. I stayed calm, refusing to engage in her theatrics. Once inside, I laid it all out. I told her plainly that this divorce was her doing. She'd opened Pandora's box with her open marriage idea, and there was no way I could pretend we could go back to normal. She didn't take that well, to put it mildly, but by then I didn't care. I reminded her that agreeing to her arrangement wasn't my choice. It was something I had begrudgingly accepted to make her happy. Even though the situation had ended up working out for me, it didn't erase the fact that she had disregarded my feelings entirely. When I told her to move out, she outright refused. Things got messy fast, so instead of escalating the conflict, I packed a few essentials and left. I ended up staying in a hotel for a couple of weeks before moving in with a friend who graciously offered me a place to stay. The damage! When I returned to the house with that same friend to collect more of my belongings, I discovered just how petty and vindictive she could be. The house was in complete disarray, and many of my personal items were destroyed. My favorite dress shoes had deep slashes. 2 of my expensive watches had shattered glass, and the mess was almost incomprehensible. Thankfully, I wasn't alone. I recorded everything. Every broken item, every destroyed belonging, every piece of evidence of her tantrum. My lawyer was quick to assure me that this destruction would only work in my favor during the proceedings. I gathered the most valuable damaged items and left. The divorce battle. When it came time to settle, she refused every reasonable offer. All I wanted was to keep the house, receive compensation for the $133,000 worth of property she had destroyed, and walk away without alimony or legal fees hanging over my head. But she was adamant, demanding alimony despite the fact that my income had often been what kept her struggling salon afloat. Since we couldn't reach an agreement, the case went before a judge. I came prepared, armed with evidence and a lawyer who knew how to present my case. I had messages from the early days of the open marriage showing my reluctance, as well as proof of her vindictive destruction of my property. Desperate, she tried to claim I had been physically abusive throughout our marriage, hoping to gain the court's sympathy. But when the judge asked her for evidence, hospital records, police reports, photos, she had nothing to back up her allegations. Her argument fell apart completely when the judge pointed out that suggesting an open marriage to an abusive spouse made no sense. Her story unraveled further, and her tears in court didn't sway anyone. The outcome? In the end, the judge ruled overwhelmingly in my favor. I was awarded the house, compensation for the damages she caused, and she was ordered to cover my legal fees. Not only was I free of alimony, but I walked away with the satisfaction of knowing she had lost every advantage she had tried to cling to. The $133,000 payout for my destroyed property, thanks in large part to my damaged watches, was just the icing on the cake. Moving forward, despite all the chaos, I'm grateful for how things unfolded. The open marriage, though initially painful, ultimately allowed me to grow in ways I hadn't anticipated. It expanded my social and professional network, gave me a clearer sense of my self-worth, and allowed me to move forward unencumbered by a toxic relationship. Even now, the connections and opportunities one gained from that tumultuous time remain a part of my life. They are a constant reminder of the resilience I found in the face of adversity. Looking back, I sometimes wonder if I should have walked away the moment she suggested opening the marriage. It might have saved me some trouble, but then again, I wouldn't be where I am today if I had. Everything happens for a reason, and this ordeal proved to be the unexpected catalyst for a life I'm truly proud of. Final thoughts. If there's one thing I've learned, it's this. You don't need to fight battles for someone who doesn't value you. When someone disrespects the foundation of your relationship, it's often a sign to walk away, even if you're not ready to let go. But sometimes, sticking around just long enough can allow you to reclaim your power in ways you never thought possible. For anyone who finds themselves in a similar situation, my advice is simple. Stand your ground, keep your dignity, and never let someone else's bad decisions derail your life. It's been a long road, but I'm finally free and thriving,